Yeah, I think it's knowing that we're all part of, I don't want to call it like a supercomputer. I think my dad always says it's like a great architect in the sky, right? So there is a plan, but we get to go off plan. You get to redesign your house at any time. So it's about knowing that nothing has to be stuck, that you can shape that. So that I am becomes about how do I want to create that for myself? And how does that then kind of work for my highest good and the highest good of everyone around me? Hi, I'm Emma Lucy Knowles, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
Emma, I
Hi.
I have a little intuition hit that this is going to be an amazing conversation.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited.
Author of The Life-Changing Power of Intuition, Emma. Like what inspired this book for you?
That's the book I keep wanting to write, but they won't let me write it yet. So
Well,
I'm kind of glad we want to have that conversation.
who's
I think
they?
in exactly the man, the publisher at the moment, but I think in the UK we have to take these things quite incrementally. So the first book I wrote was about crystals, then I did one about auras, then we're intuition. It's a kind of a more of a gradual build, because my story is quite dramatic. And I don't think it makes people feel uncomfortable. I think it's a bigger conversation that maybe some people aren't ready to
Mm,
have yet. But
mm,
I have been playing in spirit space since I was a kid. So I'm 38 now. And since I was about 7, I've been obsessed with crystals. My sister wanted to buy nice, pretty things. My pretty things were crystals, and I wanted to make jewelry out of my crystals. I was going to do all these big things that I envisaged, and everyone was just shut it down. They're like, no, you won't make any money playing with rocks. La di da di da. And when I was about 11, I used to sit. My dad kind of built this two-story kind of glass window. And I used to sit on the second floor, like looking out the window and watching all the light. And I could just sit there like a cat for hours. And I realized now I was meditating. But at the time, it was like I just went into the zone. I could just sit there and just have no thought, which is wow. Like now I think back, it's such an honor to have that. Like it's such a rare thing to be able to achieve. But one day, like my grandparents on my mum's side, they both died before my sister and I were born, but I was obsessed with them. So I'd always be like, what happened to grandma and granny? What happened to grandma and granny? And they were like, died of a broken heart, let it go, move along. Just little things as well would happen. Like I knew that my dad had a daughter from, I didn't know he was married before, but there was just these things that I keep saying and everyone just shut me down. But then this one day, I was sat in my cat spot and this man walked towards me, but it wasn't like you and I talking now, like it wasn't like a physical person. I always say it's more like a tracing paper in your mind. It's like this overlaying of a situation happening in a reality, but within your reality. And he said, I killed your grandmother. So I kind of lit up because when you connect with spirit, it feels orgasmic. It feels like your whole body's like, wow. And I think I was so excited. It's like a sugar rush that I ran into my mum and I was like, Granddad killed Granny, Granddad killed Granny. And she was like drying her hair and we were all really close. There's 4 of us. We're a really close family. And she dropped her head down and she's like, no, 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 you're wrong. Like, and she looked so hurt. And obviously I'm an empath, so I'm like, oh God, like I am as weird as everybody always thought with my imaginary friends and all this stuff. And I walked out that room and I was like, oh, right, I'm going to try and be very normal and I'm going to be like my sister. And the more you shut this sort of stuff down, like the louder it gets. So lots of sleepless nights. I kind of felt everything. I lived in a very kind of energetical house, but they kept me awake like all the time. But I was like, shut it out, shut it out, shut it out, shut it out. Until a couple of years later, it came out that he'd had a nervous breakdown. She'd gone to leave him and then he grabbed her by the throat and caught a nerve in her neck and put her to sleep,
mm,
and she died. And my mum had found her when she was 24. My mum was 24, so 20 years later he died in that period. And she hadn't dealt with that at all. She definitely had not forgiven him. And he was reaching out through me to heal that relationship for her, which is, big at 11 years old. And that's probably like the start of it. And then first boyfriend died in a car crash. Best friend died. I was texting him and like his heart stopped. And you realize that you have this ability with helping people transition and move into the other side just as much as I'm hearing stuff, and sometimes it makes sense, and sometimes I've got to learn how to make that make sense without switching it off. So it feels very important for me that we teach people how to make sense of that stuff to them, rather than just wipe it off as, oh, that's just luck, or that's just, one of those things that happens every now and again. Aren't we lucky? It's the muscle we can tune into, and we can work it just as hard as we work any muscle in the gym. We have to put practice to it, and we have to really focus. But it doesn't have to be hard work. It can be fun. And I never really felt like anybody taught me that. I found different things that helped me learn that over the years. But I always kind of wanted to put it into one book. And there it is. And here she is.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, you could just process that.
Well, I'm still like trying to process the grandfather coming to you and like telling you how your grandmother died, and then you going to your mother and then saying that, and then I think
Yeah.
that was 11 years old, right? So, how many years passed from that time to the actual validation of that story?
Uh, four. I'd say 4 years
4 years.
passed. But by that time, I was I wouldn't say depressed. I was sad. It was very sad, because if you shut off anything of who you are, I guess it's like denying your sexuality. It's denying a huge part of who I am, because I was waiting for somebody to say this is who you are, and they couldn't.
Mhm.
They wouldn't. And for a long time, I was quite angry about that too, I think, because it then grew me up, especially doing this sort of work, with this big dose of skepticism. But then I realized that's again my greatest superpower, because when I'm working with clients and we're doing readings, or we're doing tuning in, or we're doing whatever we're doing healing, I triple check, quadruple check everything. I challenge spirit all the time, because I'm like, okay, so it's put that healthy dose of check everything into that,
Mhm.
so that I'm not just off the planet, which perhaps I could be if if everyone was like, yes, so right, and it's brilliant. Like
So
I
like
spent
checks and balances, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
So when you found out that what you had seen was true, right? Because why would an 11-year-old girl know this, right? And then say to a grown up, your mother, and then you had that validation, although that could be saddening, right? Like, yes, that is a tragic incident or event in your life that had to feel good as far as validation that you weren't just making things up, right?
Or that I wasn't
Or
crazy.
crazy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, my parents come from kind of, I want to say like normal, we're from up north here. So actually from working class, my dad's kind of from Huddersfield, which is a small country, like village, sorry, in Yorkshire. And my mum's from Nottingham. So it's grafting energy. They're grafters. So for your daughter to start kind of coming to sort of saying all these kind of slightly whipsy wavesy things, like I know my dad gets it on his own level, but to hear your child saying that, I think it's easier just to kind of box it and
Mhm.
push it away, because it's how do you deal with that.
Sure.
With
And
it being how to do it.
what I love about your book is it like is a it is a guide in strengthening that, right? Like for people
Yes.
that think they're just average. I think we have this ability to tap into that intuition and really find out who we truly are.
Yeah,
And
totally.
you've demonstrated that through this book. And you've given us a guide, you've given us actual tools and practices that we can implement in our lives, which I love, right? Like actually, appealing to the analytical mind of mine, or giving me a routine to actually do and see
Yeah.
my own results, right? But it's all subjective, right? Like you can give out the practices, you can give out the guides, but you can't really interpret what that person's experience is going to be because it's different for everyone. And I think that's where
Exactly.
people get caught up because they hear your story, Emma, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's not happening for me," right? Like, but
Right.
they may not even be noticing what is actually happening for them because they're so wrapped around what happened to you.
Absolutely. And I think people go, oh, it's easy for you. And I'm like, it's not actually, you're coming from a much easier place than me. Like I've completely cut myself off before. I have kind of had to spend a whole year once, like in a wood with a guy that used to work in the Secret Service, like kind of coming back to that childlike innocence place where I could actually play with it. And because I was coming at it a place where I was attacking it, and I loathed it and I hated it. And actually, it's saying you've got this ability, and it's about how you, exactly like you said, like how does that work for you? It's the same thing with crystals. I always say to people, everyone's like, oh, my friend said, I'm looking for a partner and they bought me this rose quartz and it's not working. So I chucked it out. And it's like, how you feel love is very different to your friends. So maybe the rose quartz is great for them because it vibrates at that level, but you might be looking for something different in love. You might be looking for
Mm.
confidence in love or a way to speak your love. So it's all about working to find out what's right for you. And we're all unique. Yeah, we're all associated and we're all attached and or we're all connected in very different ways. But we have to honor that individualism. And we don't. Society has cut us from that for a really long time. And we're in a beautiful turning point in the world where we're actually getting to go, okay, I can be part of all this, but also I can be this powerful sovereign being without being arrogant or being kind of too over the top or think I'm special, because it's not what we're saying. I'm not saying I'm special. Like, I don't think that at all. Like, I'm very human at the same time. What I'm saying is this isn't just my thing. This is all about things. Like my sister, she's very intuitive, but she does PR, right? She does communication. So her way of working feels she's a complete chameleon. She can switch into how to change her energy to work with that person that she's in front of. So that's how her intuition works. And we all have that different way of doing it. And it's about honing your own art rather than shutting it down because it
Sure.
doesn't look like someone else's.
I think you're special in the fact that you found your own path, right? Like you've done this for yourself. You built your own path out of, you've created it and molded it to the way that works for you. And a lot of people want to take the nice concrete path in the park that's been walked millions of times, and you know what
Yeah.
results you're going to get. You're going to get to the
Yeah.
other side of the park. Well, some of us like challenges, like myself, and we like to create our own path, and we have no idea where we're going to end up. But that's a part of the
Right.
journey. It's a part of life.
I think when we're too concrete about things as well, I think it's important to be part of the kind of the creating, which we talk about in the book as well. Like, how can you start to manifest? Because I think manifestation is like a big buzzword right now, isn't it? But it's about also knowing that it's an incredible practice and it's an incredible part of helping you shape, but also knowing that there is this higher power that will say to you, that's great, but try this. And that's the bit that we really we fear, because if it's out of our control, we really fear it. So when we kind of
Mm.
get into that spiritual bypass thing of kind of like, my higher self said that I don't have to talk to you like this because and it's like you got to keep coming back in and finding that way through.
We'll talk about the manifestation, right? How do we get into that, that space, that powerful space that's inside of us to actually create things in our reality?
So I'm actually doing my next book on this exact thing, but I'm doing it with crystals because I think it's about how you heal within yourself too. So if I have a belief that I just attract friendships that are very takey, for example, and I heal and I work on it, but energetically in my aura, in my being, there's still this little nugget that sits there that says that, and it's signaling that out. So I will then meet somebody who crosses that energy and they're like, oh, I need a friend that gives all the time, and we connect like that. So manifestation is a lot of kind of beginner's luck, definitely, when we have that childlike play and expression, and we can kind of go into that space of kind of daydream, not make believe, but manifest believe. And then there's also this other layer where we have to do the work. You have to do the healing. What is still in your way of getting you out of your way to getting to that? For me, like I'm so blessed because years ago, as again, probably around the same time, 11, 12, I was obsessed with the Beatles. For no reason, I heard it in the car with my dad and I was like, oh my God, they're amazing. And I'd listen and listen. It would just make me feel good. So I'd play on my N64. I'd be listening to the Beatles. I'm obsessed with this band, by every album. And then like, I never knew where I was going. Exactly. So you never know where you're going. But you kind of know where you're going by how it feels. And then I come out of university, everyone's kind of, this is the job I'm doing. This is where I'm going. I'm like, I have no idea. And then I go for all these interviews, not getting anything. I'm too positive. That's the thing, too upbeat. And then I land my first job, which is working reception at Apple Records for the Beatles. So then I end up doing the MySpace page. And you're like, it takes time, but some of it isn't necessarily about sat there going, this is how it has to look. It's like, how does it feel?
Mm. Well, what's that? You talk about the I am that is in all of us, right? Like, is it the I am presence that's inside of us that is helping us shape that reality?
Yeah, I think it's knowing that we're all part of, I don't want to call it like a supercomputer. I think my dad always says it's like a great architect in the sky, right? So there is a plan, but we get to go off plan. You get to redesign your house at any time. So it's about knowing that nothing has to be stuck, that you can shape that. So that I am becomes about how do I want to create that for myself? And how does that then kind of work for my highest good and the highest good of everyone around me? Because you can see some people who do it all for egoic need, and it's like, I'm getting this and I'm getting that, and it works for them, but there's a lack of happiness in it, and
Mm.
there's a tightness, and then I think it squashes them later down the line. You sit in their health. Whereas if you're doing it for your highest good, you're kind of letting the genie out the bottle. You're sort of saying all of that is within, all that potential is within me, and there's enough to go around, and there's enough to share, and then you generate more and more and more and more, and you become more and more and more, and you connect to more and more and more. Did that
Mm.
answer the question?
I love that. No, I love that. I love that.
Tangent.
Well, it's a tough question, right? Like the I am presence. It's really like asking somebody, what is that? The God that's inside of us all, right? Like that connection to that architect in the sky. And it's like, who really has that answer, right? Like it's through this experience that we, conceptually, I can say that and create a model for that. But experientially, like, do you know that? And the only way you can know that is through your experience and through your life, right? So we all have this understanding or idea of God, but then again, we're putting it into our own like little subjective
Oh,
boxes
yeah.
of whatever we've been conditioned with. And I think, I love what you're doing because you're having a great time, right? Like with crystals and intuition and writing books and just living your best life. I'm 39, so when you say N64, I know exactly what you're talking about. Uh,
The best years ever.
Man, I miss those days.
Yeah, I know, right? God,
Um,
golden. Yes. Yeah.
yes. Um, but
But I
like
think
into,
it's like I haven't always had the best of time. Like I've had some really, if I can swear, like shitty things happen in my life, which have been incredible learning. Where I always say to the people that I work with, I don't really like the word client, but the people that I work with, where I say, if you don't have to experience that on the level I've experienced it, and my teaching becomes that my medicine becomes giving you the key to unlocking that within yourself without you needing to go so down into the shadow, then so be it.
mm,
So like there's always the good and the bad and the balance. And it was about keeping the light or keeping that belief and that faith in the times when it was the hardest and the chips were really down. When I left my job, like I the publisher said, do you want to write this book? I turned it down. They came back 6 months later and the writers pulled out. Do you want to do it? I've been working for a CEO. I was working 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for him. I'd see clients in the evening at the weekend. I was like hammering it, giving it. And when I left that job, like I wrote that book in 2 weekends, and it was the first time I'd ever had praise. Because all through school, it was like, you're useless, like it reinforced uselessness. And then to hear someone say, this is amazing, like you write really well when you've been told you're not very good at English because you can't spell. Like I write how it sounds. And all that fun to almost have been squashed out of you, for that to start unleashing. And I left that job. I literally walked in the next day, said, I'm going to leave. And I think I had like £300 in the bank. And I said, look, guys up there, if we're going to do this, let's do it. But like, I have nothing. Let's go for it. And that's that level of faith that I think some people might struggle with. And yeah, they've had stuff that people that have come and they've helped. And so it's been a learning, but it's about knowing sometimes that you have to tune in and go, is this the right thing to do? Is this the
mm,
right thing? And having that muscle, that intuitive muscle that goes, yes, now's the right time. Because for years, people saying you shouldn't be here, leave this job. And I was like, the time's not right. But when I felt it, when it clicked, I was like, this is it. That's how I know all this is going to land.
mm.
It was the easiest decision. I didn't even discuss it with anybody. I didn't even have a letter. I just went in the next day and said, this is what I'm going to do.
That's amazing.
Mm.
I know there's a ton of people right now saying that's awesome. Like they wish they could do that, right? But that fear, right? That fear that holds them to that job, to that. I mean, it's like it's like you're shackled to this, right? Like you have the golden handcuffs. It's like
Right.
you might not be happy, but yet you have bills, you have responsibilities, you have kids.
Totally. Yes.
So, I mean, when you left your job, right, and were you conscious of all the help that was coming to you, that was like the universe taking care of you, or were you just kind of like, oh, that's just kind of coincidence that this is happening right now?
No, I felt it because for a long time I was very unhappy in that space. It was a very hard job. Like you're working for a man who's very driven. I'm not particularly motivated by the material or kind of the success like he is, but my job was to support him. And I learned so much about business because had I not done that job, I was like a business assistant. So had I not done that, I couldn't run my own business. So it's about finding the blessings in those moments. And on the days where I was like, oh God, I really can't be bothered to go in, like, oh, my energy just doesn't want to be here. It was like, okay, how do I make this useful time rather than sitting and complaining? I'm on the bus, I'm doing my gratitude, I'm kind of working out how does this feel, like I'm envisaging like how does better feel, like where do I want to be. And there was many a time I was like, I never really even reached out to a recruiter. I just knew that through meditation, through kind of these exercises that we talk about in the book, that actually I just have to know when the right time. It's like when I left my last relationship, it was the same thing too. Like it was a toxic relationship, and there's probably like 3 years there too long, but it was that one moment where it tipped, and I just felt my belly, and my belly went, "You're good, let's go," and everything came to support it. And even when I left that job, they all turned around to me and they supported me. I didn't think my boss was ever going to let me go, but he supported the whole thing. And when I said I need to leave early, he supported it because that's how I knew it was right. If everything
Mm,
plays in your favor, it's because you're going in the right way. If everything's starting to feel like, you you got to kind of come back and get a little bit stronger and not give up on it, but just the timing is everything.
sure. I love that. I also love this one little passage here. It's like page 93. I'm going to go ahead and read it. Just, I'm going to get your
Please.
thoughts after it. So, you are more powerful than you can even imagine or will ever really know. We tend to condition ourselves into accepting what is given to us, believing that what we get is what we deserve, and not asking for more just because, well, why should we? Every so often, though, we have sweet moments of rebellion when our brain feels as if it might implode with one more crushing, self-annihilating thought, where we feel a fire in our belly or a kick in our gut. It's a cycle we need to break or even to unlearn to start to consider that instead of us being average human beings, we are all hyper intelligent forces with our own unique scale and with the potential to connect to a greater force. I resonated with that 100%, right? And I just want people to realize that. When did you realize that for yourself?
Sometimes I still am, but I think like I think I had to hit 30. Like I think I had to go through wanting all the things that my friends wanted, recognize that I was trying to be normal when I'm not, and actually not being very grateful for not fitting in and not being very um kind of inspired by like being very different. And then when I it hit that sweet note of, oh, maybe I'm not meant to, because I think, we're being sold to all the time. So you sold this dream of life right out the womb, right through school, and it's shut you down, shut you down, shut. Some of the greatest bullies I know were definitely my teachers at school. Shut you down, shut you down, shut you down. Oh, you've got a spark. I don't have that spark. Squish that out of you, right? And it was just that moment of I don't fit anywhere. And then finding complete peace in that moment. And I'm like, I fit in because I connect to something great that we all do. And then to kind of take a step back and just watch everybody and watch some of the most amazing people I know and I've been lucky enough to work with who've got so much potential and so much talent, and watch them waste it trying to squish into a relationship, into some things that are quite basic things that we think we should have as human beings.
Mm,
It was soul destroying. I was like, I was meant to always stand back so I could look in. And at
mm,
that moment, I was like, we've got so much potential, and I now need to start honoring that rather than berating it.
mm. Stagnation is death, in my opinion, right? Because I
Yeah.
was the same way that you were. Like I really never really understood who I was or what my curiosity was until 33, really. Before that, like you, like I was one of the pack, really. I mean, I had this uh, mm, probably this innate knowing that we are more powerful than what we believe we are, but because of my conditioning and everything that's dogmas,
Hmm.
programming, everything growing up has turned me to look away from that and to really plug into that societal machine that says you need more, you need to be a consumer, you need to be successful by having a job, a house, and kids in a car, and all of
Yeah.
that, which is fine, right? But I think it's after you accumulate that, right, and you look inside and you're like, what is left? Is this happiness? Because it doesn't feel like it's happiness. Not that it's wrong, but it's just like there isn't a spark there, right? Like it just feels like I'm being told what to do and I'm following directions, really. And when I complete those instructions, now what, really? Where's that flame? Where's that
Right.
fire?
Where's that sweet spot?
Um, and I just, your story, it just resonates with me like 100%. And I loved
Love.
a lot of the practices that you have in this book. The one that I really liked was creating a sacred space, right? And I wonder if you could just really quick go over that.
Sure. I think our whole house is our sacred space. Our body is our sacred space. Like that took me a bit longer to realize that my whole body, I know everyone goes, my body's my temple, but I think sometimes we take those things that are actually truth and we make them so gimmicky that we ignore them again. That's rubbish. But actually, growing up, my bedroom was like my haven. I knew I could go in that space. Spirit was there. The energy is peaceful. But anyone walk into my room, it'd be like, oh my God, it's amazing. How do you do that? So it's about making it like feel childlike, but not in a sense that you've got like Barbie posters everywhere. It's about creating this kind of energy hub where spirit is with you all day, every day, waking, sleeping, you're with spirit. But you have got that spot that, like when you're sitting at a games console, when you sit there, you're plugging in and that's it, you're focused. I'm here. So that when you arrive there, you've had a crappy day out at work. When I get back to that space, even if I can't feel spirit because there's so much going on around me, when I come into my home, I've got this designated space and in my family that they will respect when I'm in that space. I'm connecting, I'm in that space, and that's just what it is. And it could be the entire room, it could be your entire living room. But for me, having, and you'll see it in churches, you'll see it in every religion, they've got a level of something that they pray to or they mantra to, whether that is a Buddha or it's the cross, whether it's kind of a deity. It's focusing your intention on love and putting things, therefore, that you love in that space bounces back to you like a mirror, the vibration of love into that space. So you're calling in the purest of energy. I put pictures of me as a kid when I'm really happy. I put plants. I've got a lava lamp over on this one. I've got them all around the house now. But things that bring me those vibrations, but things that represent all the elements. Because I think elemental energy is really important, like that, connecting to nature, connecting to earth, to water. So it's about bringing in things there that feel good. And you might not have loads of room in your house. And for a long time, I just used to use my windowsill. So I'd have a little Buddha and a crystal and all my intentions. And then it just starts to grow. But it's about designing it in a space of what makes me feel good and not having clutter around me. But these are things that are markers that when I get there, and I know this energy is coming in, but I might have days when I don't feel like that energy is coming in. So I've got these things around me that when I look at them, they're provoking that feeling within me. So it's creating, like going into a church, you're creating this mini space where when I'm here, I'm here. And the more you use that energy, the more that energy just flows within that space the minute you get there. So I don't think you need to do anything desperately special. I don't think you need to, you might want to do sound bowls, you might want to like light incense and do all those things really very clearing for that space. But as long as it's a space that when you sit there, you feel good, the light's right. If you like a lot of light, get it in the light. If you like shade or coolness or you want something darker, just find that spot. And we do a whole exercise in there about finding your space because it's not always the place where you think it is. Like for some people, it's the bathroom. For some people, their sacred space is out when they're running. You know, it's finding how that works for you.
Mm-hmm. Are you still running in the morning?
Do you know what? I love running. And then this year, I've had this mad year already with energy, but I had a 12-week back injury
Mm.
and what had happened is I'd woken up some past trauma in my back, but it's taught me new skills that I had to go and learn, like spirit release and past life regression. So I really miss running. So now I'm swimming.
Nice. Yeah, I run in the morning too. It's like my oh, it's my sacred space. It's
Oh,
going see the sunrise, right? And being in that little spot and
yeah,
feeling the energy, the new energy from the sun and
right.
soaking that in and taking me out into the battlefield of life.
It's true,
And
right.
yeah, it's just amazing.
We take that for granted because we need that sunlight in the morning. When my sister's
Mhm.
like sunglasses, I'm like, let that sunlight in because you're gonna get that all transitioning to melatonin. You can have a much better sleep. So it's not just about getting in the light; it's about letting your body do what it needs to do as well. So, oh
Sure.
gosh, if I could run,
Past life,
manifest.
yeah, past life regressions, right? Like
Yeah,
hypnosis. I'm
yeah,
really interested in that right now. Like
yeah.
really interested. Like
I'm loving it.
what's your experiences with that?
Oh, I've been doing past life regression probably since I was about 18, because it was the one place where I know I can go to a great space and I can create that space when I'm doing healing work with people, because I see these films for them, but I could never really, I can do it for myself, but you struggle because you start going, I can't see for myself. It's noisier. So for me, going into regression is just like it's a trip, because it kind of, you just fly. And for me, it's like, can recommend anything
Are you
better.
facilitating that or are you going to
Do
a
now, yeah,
practitioner?
yeah,
You
yeah.
oh,
I do now. I've got this wonderful woman. She's 70 years old, and like I think in the UK, like you could pay, I don't know, like £600 an hour, which is what, I don't know in dollars. I don't know the conversion, but it's for me. She charges like 120. So somebody, that's also important for me. It's about make sure you pick the right practitioner. Just because someone charges the earth doesn't mean they're the best.
sure. Yeah, I mean, you got to do research. I mean, that's with anything really.
Yeah.
And you really got to resonate with that person. Um, that's great though, because I've really gotten into, I don't know if you've experienced it, QHHT. I don't know
No,
if you ever
tell
heard of
me.
that. So that is Dolores Cannon. Have you ever heard of her?
Yes, that's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
With
her.
Liz.
That's her
You don't know.
practice.
Yeah, yeah. Very
So
cool.
they take you to a past life, and then they regress you even further to the higher self, and then you receive information from
Yes.
the higher self, and then you can have
And
questions or
it's
something like that. Fascinating. What do you think?
so important.
What do you think that? So she calls it the subconscious, right? Like when you get into that state and you're asking questions of it, right? Um, I guess that could be the architect, right? Like that could be the server, that could be the network that we're all connected with. Um,
Yeah.
have you ever communicated with that?
I do. I communicate with lots of different things. I kind of, this is a comfortable space to talk about it. I kind of believe that we're moving, not like with time, we're moving through it. So I think there's different pockets, and that's from what I've experienced. When I connect to things, we don't always go back to the same place. I'm not, even if we're going past life, if we're going high, like planetary, or if we're connecting to different extraterrestrial, or you could be connecting to, for me, when I kind of started to go into that space, I'd meet something that was called the council, and then I kind of get a bit frustrated with that, because again, that sometimes even those high abilities feel a bit man-made, because I'm like, I
Mhm.
know I can go higher than that, but again, it's just another feeling energetically, even at a spiritual level, where something somewhere has been implemented to keep you down on your level. So definitely when you're exploring that space, always going with the mind of, actually I can go as high as feels good and comfortable as I'm ready for.
Well, when you go higher, right? Like what kind of information are you receiving?
Well, I did a lot of kind of like release from like energy, and how to release things from illness or jabs. We're talking that sometimes some stuff from politics comes through. I get information and stuff that's coming maybe for clients that week. It's just it's expansive. Book stuff is always downloaded in different spaces, and also a lot of my healing happens in that
Mm.
space, kind of things where I've known something to be true. And sometimes I think we need a bit of validation, and maybe where someone's gone, no, no, that's not true. That's another great space where I can just kind of just bounce it like a mirror and go, I kind of felt like this about this. What do you think?
That's awesome. Well, I'm sure you're at a point now where you really don't need a whole lot of validation for that, right? Um, but some people do, like I'm still in that space where I'm kind of like, all right, I'll have communication with what I believe to be my higher self, and then
Yeah.
it'll say things to me, right? And I can't lie. I mean, a lot of it feels great, right? Like it's
Right.
pushing me forward in my life towards um, life goals and aspirations and my dreams. But then again, it's like there's a fear that is this just my egos or is just me making this up? Like, is this my imagination? Like,
And why
I'm gonna,
me?
yeah, why me, right? Because I don't want to look like a fool, right? Like that's the fear. I don't want to be like that guy that's like, saying this stuff and then yeah, hey Trey, man, that didn't happen, dude. Like you're a little out of your mind. But that's where the faith comes in, right? Like um how
Always, as long, I always think, like I was saying, it's about, as long as it's for the highest good of you and for all, you can't really fail on it, because as long as it's for not just you, it's for all, because we are all I am. I mean, that I am is interconnectivity. And I think when people are doing things for, it's that old parable, isn't it, about the two wolves, kind of like which one you feed.
Mm.
If you're doing things with goodness and it's heart-led and you're doing it for the betterment, if something doesn't land as you think, but you get into it, and I've had a couple of things like this, there's so much stuff that you learn. That's what I'm saying. Don't give up on the belief. There's things that you need to learn in order to get you to that space. And also, like, time is completely man-made, right? So you might be like, well, I'm on a clock here. I got to get going. But you're doing your work, and you've got to take, for love, for example, or even a business connection. If you've been doing your work and you're like, say, up here, and you're wanting to bring in this great big vision, you have got to wait for spirit to bring towards you those people who are meeting you on that level. Because if someone meets you under here, they'll either try and pull you down, because that's just human nature, or they'll scramble over the top of you to get higher. So sometimes it's about, you have to have trust in that timing, that everything is coming to you as it needs to be, ready and healed, so that you're not going through this being healing work, that this is just stuff that you can then enjoy. And that's why I
Mm.
feel like I'm having fun now, because I've released the need to learn the lesson. It's like, I'm not going to rush.
That's awesome. Patience.
Yeah.
There's a quote.
Tricky.
There's a quote in your book that I really love. Right. You have feared your intuition and avoided its truth. I don't know if you remember that or not. I don't know if you could elaborate on that.
Well, it's a whisper, and it's exactly like you're saying. So ego and intuition use the same voice in your head. So my voice in my head sounds like this. So when intuition is going, oh, you could have this, and it could feel like this, and go and do this, or da 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 da, I'm like, that feels really nice and fanciful. But when that same voice goes, you're useless, you probably could do with losing a few pounds, and nobody really likes you, da, da, da. It's the same voice. So how do you determine which one to use? Because the ego voice is much more real, because you can prove it. The intuitive voice, I can't prove, therefore, okay, I'll just ignore it. But actually, if you spend that time sliding the switch into, I'm going to listen to that voice and practice just not shutting that voice off because it's useful. That's the voice that says you're going too close to the cliff. Stop. Don't, I'm just like a little, but you can use it as a guide rather than to lead the pack. And that's why they always say you've got like the angel and the devil on your shoulder, right? But it's about listening into that one and always coming into how does that feel in my body, and not bypassing. So if spirit is saying you're going this way, don't just then go, oh, okay, no, that's it. Yeah, that's it. I'm sorted. Then I have to go back 10 steps. Okay, what do I need to do in order to get there? What do I, and asking that every day, rather than going from hearing the kind of the epiphany and then sliding straight into ego, which is I want sugar, 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 and it tastes good and I want it now.
Mm.
Going every day, kind of like tempering the beast, but knowing that it's the same voice, but it's different aspects using the same voice. So I
Mm.
always teach muscle recall for, like, I call them tells, because if my spirit is saying go left, and I'll have to sit then and go, okay, is that right? And then I'll build the muscle so that if it's a yes and it's a pull in my belly, or if it's a no, it might be a burn in my heart, I'll know that I'm definitely using the right voice. Because
Yeah.
ego is smart. It will start to talk to you like try to with like intuition does, but it uses very different language. It's harder, it's harsher, it's sharper. Intuition's kind, it's loving, it's everything a mother should be, that kind of nurturing, nurturing, nurturing. Whereas this is like a drill master. It's run, it's sit, it's don't get up, you're being lazy, da, 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 which you need a little bit of to motivate yourself.
Sure.
So don't cull one, find the way in which you can slide up the scale.
Mm. You call it, I think you call it your intuitive yes and your intuitive no. And there's actually a practice that helps you find that for yourself. Is
Absolutely.
is your intuitive yes in your stomach or in your belly?
It is in my gut, but this is where again ego gets a bit cheeky, because it then knows that. So I'll always try and say to people as well, like, language how it feels. So is it like a punch in the gut, or is it a tight in the gut? Because if ego goes, oh, it's in the gut, and you can hear it, what you want to feel in your whole body is where else am I feeling that punch, or where else am I feeling that tightness? So you use your whole body over time rather than just those bits.
What do you think intuition is? I mean, that's a tough question, but I mean,
For me, I feel like we are, like, life or the universe is this great big octopus, if we can look at it that way. And it's like we're like a tentacle, and at the end of each tentacle there's a human being coming back into this one sort of source computer. And I think intuition is the vibration of the purest form coming from that source saying this is what you deserve and this is what's good for you, and it's our choice whether we choose to listen to it or we don't.
It's funny because I just used that example or metaphor to my wife, explaining like
There you
explaining this
go.
to her. It's funny how, you know, synchronicities, right? Um,
Beautiful.
I think that for me, intuition, like you said, it's a muscle. It's and if you haven't used it, right, like you never trusted it, you just closed it off because of, you know, people are saying, yeah, what do you know, people have told you that you shouldn't do things or you shouldn't listen to this or blah blah blah. And so like now people are starting to realize what intuition may be for them. And I think it's just like going back to what you said about going to the gym is like you have to work this muscle and then maybe haven't like be open-minded and skeptical about it at first, right? But then as you learn what that muscle does for you and what it brings forth in your life, that's where you build that trust and that faith where you can really lead into that intuition. I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Definitely. I think it's like it's just something we're not taught to use. Like we're taught, aren't we, how to read, to write. Like that extra sixth sense is something we've been brought up to. Like witches use it, or kind of wacky woo-woo people use it. So it's kind of been tainted, I think, again by this kind of higher kind of being in the man-made world of kind of let's not listen into that because that
Sure.
gives you free will. I think when you listen to your intuition, you're in your freest sense of self, and you're not going to do things that just suit other people. You do things that suit you and therefore make you happier. And in making you happy, you make everyone else around you happier. And I think sometimes it's like I call it like a sleeping dog. Sometimes it can lie really dormant and you're like, where are you? What's happening? What's happening? And what's going on? But you think it's dormant until something massive happens. So if you start working with it in a time that you get that muscle so strong, just like using your core, right? It starts working for you without you even recognizing it. So it doesn't have to just come to those big moments in life where you feel like disasters happening. You use it in every bit of your life, and you're using it like a kid. You're playing with it because that's what it is. It's playing. It is letting you connect to something, and it is about you co-creating. It's not like going, this is the path and that's it. It's about going, it's explorative. If I went that way and I visualize that, how does that feel? And use my intuition to tune into that. Oh, that doesn't feel quite right like that. So if I change this and this, how does that feel? I think we just got a bit lazy, or we're sold to it. Like, what's that movie? Have you seen that movie Wall-E? You know, where
Mm-mm.
like all the humans so fat and they're kind of living on this other planet, and we've ruined this one, and like it's just we're
Oh,
floating around.
Wally. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Wally. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's how I think that's how we've gotten a little bit. It's like we rely on everything else to tell us what to do, and then
Mm.
we rebel and we kick out when it doesn't. And then when we go, this is how you do it, and it's a bit of hard work in play. We're like, well, that wasn't what I signed up for, because I was always told I was just going to get this, and this, and
Mm.
it's not as hard as you think to undo it or to get started with it. It's not.
Yeah. I think Disney has got some awakened script writers, I think. With Wally, I totally agree with that. And then I think there's another one where Ghost or something like that, where the guy dies and
Oh
um,
yeah, yeah, about the soul. Is it soul or something like
Soul.
that?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, my kids watch all these movies, and I'm like,
So
whoa,
good.
there's some really strong messages in there. And I'm like, these guys have to be taking some like you know, you know,
Tripping
some
away.
trips, and they're going back and writing these scripts, and I'm like really resonating with them. I'm like, yes, that's what I'm talking about, Disney.
Right,
Um,
exactly. Exactly.
they're tapping into the universe for that universal truth, the big truth,
Right.
and that's why they're
Completely.
so successful. Intent, right? Intention. How
Absolutely.
important is that for
It's
manifesting in
everything.
abundance?
Everything. If your intention is like wavering, and I think Esther and Jerry Hicks do this brilliantly, is that, intention is what you're sending out to you. So I think like we're sat in a great big spider web. And if my intention is I want an ice cream, then it's like I'm sending that signal out, and I know how easy that is to get that. If my intention is about like I want a Ferrari, and I send that intention out, but I start then going, but then I don't have the money, and I start to like just the wave of the signal gets really weak. So I have to kind of get really sharp in making sure that that particular part of the web is strong, which is where I think the healing part comes really important. Because if you've had relationships, or you've attracted things that sort of make you not believe that you're allowing of those things, you need to heal that energy within yourself. So again, the signal is strong. So I think intention is the start of it, but the intention signal is everything, and keeping that vibration tight is really important.
Do crystals help you with that intention? Do they help you with your energy? Like I haven't really been a big crystal guy, and I really don't know a whole ton about it, but could you give me just like the beginner's guide of what crystals do for you?
So they're like us. They've been formed over like thousands of years of pressure under the ground, like bam, bam, bam. And they're like naturally occurring minerals. And what they're doing is they're vibrating, just like we are sending off a signal. Their energy is a bit pure because they don't eat junk food, they don't watch rubbish telly. They're kind of clear. And each crystal is vibrating at a different intensity, different frequency. And what we've recognized is that those frequencies kind of naturally help us start to align our energy. So when we've got our energy centers or our chakras, back in the day, we could sit and each one of those would be spinning in a clockwise direction, and those vortex of energy would be pulling in and pushing out beautifully. But then when we do kind of, people drink, they take drugs, that kind of negative thought, bit by bit, those energy centers start to, I don't like the word block, but for me, it's they start to turn the other way. So they start to like, you start to go into this little turtle shell, you start to hide yourself within your body and away from your energy. And the crystals are a bit like having the mobile phone, right? You kind of have them with you, and they can naturally start to affect the way in which the energy spins, and clears that up for you while you don't really even need to be doing much with them. Like you can meditate, you can take a bath with them, you can take them on your run, but they're like having like this Wi-Fi box that just helps you just align your signal without you really needing to do much. And I think again with them, intention is important. So we start working with them and helping people to work with spirit work more, because there's something, I guess it's like when people go and read tarot, they might find it easy to have tarot and then to have a psychic reading, because there's a card in front of me that I can see that says this. And I think crystals, they give you that focus point as well, as much as anything. Like I can focus on this, I can put this in my hand, I can feel it, there's a heat, there's a pressure, something is happening, that my mind will try and kind of say it's rubbish, it's this, it's that, but actually I'm feeling something, and that's the difference. It's
Hmm.
something here that's happening to my human.
Is that how you find the best crystal for you?
Absolutely. It's
What's your
connection.
what's your favorite crystal?
Oh, it's a big one. I think labradorite is amazing because I think it helps you reflect your heart truth. So if you kind of think that you're sort of saying this is who I am and I'm brilliant, but you're actually quite shy with it, sometimes it helps push beyond that shyness. So I really like that particular piece. But anything yellow is great for me because that's all about the power center, about the belly. Just getting anybody into believing in themselves is a huge thing these days, I think. So color is as important.
Hmm. So it says in your bio you're clairvoyant and a hands-on healer. Clairvoyant, what exactly is your definition of that?
So it's been always really difficult to kind of put into what are you? Because for me, like the word clairvoyant, it resonates, but it doesn't always. Like psychic resonates, but it doesn't, because there's always these stigmas attached to those words too. But for me, I'm a seer. So I see. So when I was learning healing work, what I realized was like, oh, this is a bit boring. I want to do it this way. And then as I started to work, I closed my eyes and I'm working on somebody, and I've never met these people. These films would start playing out in my mind. And when they'd
Hmm.
left, I'd be like, feel really sad because I was like, this all looked like junk to me. I have no idea what this is. But then over time, I started to get ballsy, and I'd be like, all right, saw all this stuff. And then people were like, oh, it's like you've read my diary. And I just started to tune that I realized that spirit's showing me, again, like I said, where you're going, what's happened, what we need to shift, and saying to you, these are your choices. So it's kind of, for me, it might be easy to say seer, but I think people like the clairvoyant word because it's that. But then sometimes I hear and it's, sometimes I feel, sometimes I see. It depends on the person I'm working with. So if someone's more visual, I'll see more visual stuff. If someone's more of a thinker, it'll be much more words in my ears. And it's just knowing that it doesn't have to be just one thing, that actually you've got to keep changing hats with it.
Yeah, that's a terrible question. I don't know why I asked. Who are you or what are you? Like it just,
No, I
I
think it
I
is. I
always
think
forget. I forget the five clairs. Like I just keep forgetting them. Right. Like
yeah.
I just I
But then they have
like
such a negative kind of, if I go on TV, like they won't use that word. They'll be like crystal guru. And I'm like, okay, because it's like it makes people feel really uncomfortable.
sure.
They want a word. Yeah, and
Crystal guru.
it, yeah, I
Um,
think guru is a worse word, but that's fine. That's fine.
uh, so yeah, I mean, your books, you have your first one's about crystals, right?
Yeah.
So
Second
if
one's about
anyone who's
roots.
curious about crystals and what they can do for them, they can just pick that up as well.
Yeah,
I
they
think this
can.
book is more practical in that it does give you practices to use in your everyday life, which I love, by the way.
Thank you.
And what's the other book?
So I did crystals, power crystal healing, and then we did You Are a Rainbow, which is about auras and seeing some practical stuff in there too. Then there's
Do
intuition,
you
and
see auras?
I do, but I kind of see them inside my mind, like I was talking about my granddad. Some people see them around and like, oh, you're very blue, but you'll see it or you'll just know it. So again, it's about teaching people how to hype up their skill rather than write it off. And I love watching people like, well, I don't really think I'm seeing anything, but I just keep thinking of the color blue, and I'm like, that's it, that's it, that's it, that's right,
That's
it.
awesome. And I think you sell crystals on your website too for people.
I do, yeah, yeah. Like, I only do like maybe I think I've got what 15, quite specific because I hand charge them all,
Mhm.
so put some kind of good vibrations into that. So yeah,
Emma, this has been amazing. I just love talking to you.
yes, good talk all day.
I know, right? Where can people find you? Where can they buy your crystals? Where can they buy your books?
God bless you. Books are all on the Amazon. There's links on my website, which is emmalucyknowles.com, and
Hmm.
crystals are on there too. I'll say hi as well. Drop me an email.
Well, I can't thank you enough for joining. This has been fantastic.
No, thank you for making the time.